All right, we are back here on the podcast. We are recapping the latest action from the NCAA tournament. We are down from 16 teams to four. With me, as always, part of our March coverage. Now, technically, it's April 1st because the tournament started late this year. Troy Mauriello is back with us. Troy, how are you?
I'm all right, Mike. Yeah, as John Rothstein says, we sleep in May. We're now into April. It feels like we are a little late. We're like a week behind with everything. Feels like we should be recapping probably the Final Four this weekend, but week behind. But what a week of games, right? Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. Got some awesome matchups, and we have a pretty cool Final Four. Maybe not the best Final Four possible, but four unique stories. So definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, and I say we talked about this last week. You said, hey, like not having Cinderella around sort of like was going to lead to some better basketball games. For the most part, we got that.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, we were just talking about, yesterday you saw Purdue and Tennessee. What a game between, in a battle really between two of the, better college players in the sport right now, and Dalton Connect and Zach Edey kind of going blow for blow. We did kind of end up getting that Cinderella in NC State, which is really cool. But we have that dominant force in UConn as well, and a really fun team in Alabama, at least a very entertaining team to watch in Alabama. We got some awesome games, but yeah, so it's a pretty good Final Four as well. You kind of have a mix of everything. And the basketball this weekend, I thought was very very high level. Even the Duke NC State game on Sunday, that game was a kind of a plotting, slow first half with a lot of missed shots, but NC State turns it on and scores about 55 points in the second half in that one and kind of goes crazy. And Saturday you see the dominance of UConn against Illinois with their 30-0 run, which I'm sure we'll get to. And like I said, Alabama, they play a very entertaining brand of basketball. If you're an NBA fan who just kind of tunes into the NCAA tournament, the only time that you watch college basketball is in March, Alabama is probably your favorite team because they probably play the closest to the NBA type game of up and down the court. So, a lot of very very entertaining basketball all weekend long.
Yeah, that's for sure here. And let's get to some headlines there. Not saying that it was very quiet this week, though, for the most part, because Calvary State, he was in insight mass chaos in the coaching chaos. But a couple of names I want to throw out here to get your take on here on the coaching side here. So, Chris Mack of Charleston, I missed this last week. Obviously, longtime Xavier coach. Now he resurfaces at Charleston. Good spot for that after Pat Kelsey left.
Yeah, definitely an interesting hire there. Charleston is a program that has really done well in that conference for a while, and interesting to go with Chris Mack, a guy who has that obviously that high major experience. How can you dislike a hire like that? A guy who has done it on the highest level possible in college basketball. So if you're going to replace a guy like Pat Kelsey, going with Chris Mack, can't hate on that one at all.
Yeah, speaking of Pat Kelsey, he's the one who got the Louisville job. He ended up taking that gig here. And considering how messed up the situation has been in Louisville, I mean, there were rumors they're talking to Richard Pitino, which would have been hilarious if they actually hired him after the whole situation with his father here. I think
Yeah.
like they did about as well as they could have after they got spurned by Dusty May.
Exactly. I was going to say the same thing. It was a really rough look. I feel like for them for about a week with that coaching spurt. I was obviously, like you said, with Dusty May, going to Richard Pitino. Thankfully, they didn't go a step further and go to Rick. That would have been pretty funny as a St. John's, or not very funny as a St. John's fan, at least seeing that one. But they do settle on a guy who I think is going to do a really, really good job there. They need this was probably the most crucial hire they've ever made as a program with how Kenny Payne, how bad Kenny Payne has been there the past couple of years. They need someone that they can be pretty sure is going to turn it around, and I think they got their guy. The press conference, he looked pretty impressive. So we'll see if he can hit the ground running now and turn around a program that I think we said this last week. They spend as much money on basketball as they do on football. Like they are a basketball school. They're a basketball first school. So that's it's not gonna he's not gonna have a lack of resources there. So we'll see about that. We'll see if he can turn it around right away in this era of the transfer portal where you can go from a team that is the basement of your conference right into the NCAA tournament in 11 months. So we'll see if he's able to accomplish that.
Yeah, and obviously Kenny Payne set the bar pretty low, so I think he has nowhere to go but up.
Yeah, exactly. It can't get any worse. You finish middle of the pack in the ACC in year one, and it's probably a big success for Louisville. So that's the one thing he does have going for him. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and another one that sort of flew on the radar last week, I want to bring it up to you as a Big East guy here. DePaul, which has been the doormat since they showed up in the Big East 20 years ago. Chris Holtmann now is the head coach there after he gets fired by Ohio State. I think that's a solid pickup for them.
I love that hire. And we just talked. I just talked about Louisville. What a crucial hire that was. DePaul's the same way because DePaul is really teetering on the edge of like serious conversations of like, should this team still be a high major team? Can this team still compete on the Big East level? When you look at just how utterly uncompetitive they've been the past couple of years, I'm a Big East guy, obviously being a St. John's guy. DePaul lost every game, and they really were hardly competitive in any of those games outside of the games they played against Georgetown. So this is a DePaul team that just needed to hit a home run with this hire, and I think they did that. Again, this is the era of the transfer portal. You have a guy who's done it on not only the high major level but at a Big Ten program, who can show that he can do it on a high major program. Again, if you're DePaul, you're not looking to be in the NCAA tournament every year, in the top 25 every year type program. You're just looking to compete at this point, and if you can finish sixth or seventh in the Big East and play around 500 in the Big East, I think you're perfectly happy with that. You still have the Chicago area. You should theoretically have a large recruiting pool to recruit from, and as the transfer portal as well. Getting guys to want to play in that area. And come back home maybe to play in the Chicago area. So I like the hire. Again, it's a tough situation that you've put yourself in the last couple of years, but I think you might have the guy to turn it around.
Yeah, a couple of quick ones in the West Coast bucket I'm calling here. Andy Enfield leaving USC, go to SMU. That one sort of raised my eyebrow a little bit.
Yeah, I actually forgot for a second that they were headed to the ACC, and I was like, that's a weird one. I guess when you realize that they're headed to a power conference, it makes a little more sense. But yeah, just a weird hire. Did not see that one coming at all. Again, a guy who's done it at the high major level now. It feels like he goes now to the kind of the mid major level, although SMU no longer a mid major program. But I guess you like to see that a team that makes the jump up and is now investing in basketball. And we'll see how it works out for them because I would say he's been a little bit of a disappointment at USC the last couple of years. Of course, this year, with all the talent that they had, not even really being competitive, in the Pac-12, let alone, being an NCAA tournament contender. So we'll see if he's able to have better fortunes at SMU.
That to me felt like I'm going to get out before they fire me move from Andy Enfield.
Yeah, yeah, kind of like the move that you would expect Bobby Hurley to make at Arizona State, right? Like a guy who's probably on his way out, and maybe I'll leave before I get the axe. You're absolutely right.
Another one in the West Coast department here. Kyle Smith takes Washington State at the NCAA tournament first time since 2008. Goes to Stanford, so he leaves the WCC bid to the ACC league, which I think is an interesting move on his part.
Yeah, another one where you go, wow, he left and he stayed in conference. He's pulling an Ed Cooley, and then you realize, oh, Stanford's going to the ACC. Never mind. Again, though, you would assume Stanford, going to the ACC now. Stanford's been a program that really has not been relevant for a long time in the college basketball sphere. Going to the ACC, you would hope that they, are going to make more of a commitment to basketball now, and that's a hire that you would think does just that. So, good hire, and we'll see how it works out for them.
Last one here came up this week. Danny Sprinkle, 1 year at Utah State, wins the Mountain West regular season, goes to the tournament, wins the game. Now he's the head coach at Washington as they go to the Big Ten. I think it was a good job by them.
I think so as well, and he's pulling the college basketball player, taking a page out of their book, spending 1 year at a school and then getting out of there and going somewhere else. But yeah, good hire. I mean, what a job he did at Utah State this year. Obviously, didn't end great for them, but they win an NCAA tournament game, and then get blown out by Purdue. But they win an NCAA tournament game, team with all those transfers, and he does a really good job pulling them together. So, I mean, you can't say anything bad about that hire right now because that was an awesome job he did in his 1 year at Utah State.
Yep. And now we get to the NCAA is an idiot department here with some of this stuff here. This one pop like we don't usually talk about the women's tournament. There is a lot of fun basketball being played, but I just don't have the knowledge to
Mhm.
talk about here. But I have to call out BS when I see it here. So let's take a look here at a photo for the YouTube people. I'm sure you've seen this going around if you follow sports like a couple days. This is from the AP. It says the NCAA says a 3-point line was drawn 9 inches short at Portland Women's Regional by court supplier here. So to give you the background on this one here, the NCAA women's tournament is a little different than men's because obviously, like that they do is they top 16 teams host the first round pods. They go into neutral sites. It's like If UConn's the top seed, they host 4 teams for a pod, so on and so forth. The regionals
Yep.
are 2 sites. One was in Albany here, the other's in Portland. The court in Portland, as you can see by the photo, the 3-point arc on the left is much shorter
Oh,
than the one on the right from the key. They were off by 9 inches. They played through 2 games on Thursday, 2 games on Friday. Somehow no one noticed this. Saturday, they noticed it. They measure it. That was off. And the two teams say, you know what? We'll play anyway because we don't want to hold the tournament up for them to fix it. So,
mhm.
what a disaster.
Yeah, and first of all, how does no one notice that? Like you look at that photo, it looks so obvious. I mean, I guess if you're not looking for it, maybe you don't realize it, but it's not like they were off by an inch. Dude. This is 9 inches. Like this is, like how does no one figure this out? And they played all those games like you mentioned on the court. But yeah, just another move, a clown move by the NCAA in what's been a rough month for them, especially on the women's side. I just the lack of attention to detail is absolutely disgusting. And like you mentioned, there's some awesome games being played on the women's side. You have Caitlin Clark and LSU or going against LSU tonight, and just an awesome game. I mean, this is probably the best that we've seen women's basketball in our lifetimes. And you have the NCAA making mistakes like this. It's a slap in the face to the women's game, in my opinion, to show that little lack of attention. Credit to the coaches though, I guess for rolling with it and just saying we'll play through it. Because I know it would have been an hour delay, but I probably would have been like, no, fix that. Like you guys messed it up, fix it. I don't care if it takes an hour. We'll go through our warm-ups again. Because obviously one team has the advantage in one half and the other one gets it in the other half. But credit to the coaches for that. But overall, just a really bad job by the NCAA. To a sport that I think has really shown itself to be really fun this season and really caught a lot of new eyeballs this season. To do that, it's just an absolute shame.
Yeah, they've always been behind the 8 ball in terms of the women's tournament, trying to like
Yeah.
pay attention to detail here. And we saw it back in the pandemic turn in the bubble tournament when we
Hmm.
saw the difference in the weight rooms between the men's tournament
Hmm.
and the women's tournament. They tried to basically pass off just like a weight like a dumbbell, like a barbell
Yeah.
and racks, like one rack is like that's compared to like the mega full state of the art equipment thing. But
Hmm.
that you had the whole situation this year where they forgot to check the back of a ref and assign the Charleston graduate Charleston game. They had to pull the ref at halftime.
Hmm.
And we have
Hmm.
teams staying at a regional site in Utah who had to go to a different hotel because they basically running into like racist threats to their players. The NCAA used to do a lot better for the women's side they've been doing.
Yeah, exactly. And these are all things that, this is a lack of attention to detail, and it's a shame because these are all easily catchable mistakes. If you had people who you would assume it's their job to pay attention to these things and they're not doing it, it makes all of my complaints about the selection committee kind of look silly on the men's side when you compare it to the women's side and what they're dealing with for their tournament. It's really really a shame. These games should be presented on level ground, the men's game and the women's game, because that's how competitive the women's game has become. And to see the NCAA kind of throw it off to the side and miss things that are just so obvious and so easily fixable and easily catchable, it's a real shame.
Well, I've hit the detail is the right word because like if this had happened, it's let's say at the UConn regional, if the court was off in
Mhm.
Boston, like we'll be screaming about it for days on end, but like it's kind of falling on the radar because it's the women's side.
Exactly, yeah, and it would be caught immediately if I had to guess. Someone is catching this like within in the pregame warmups of the first game and saying, "Hold on a second, we got an issue with the court here. We got to fix this before the game even starts." To play a couple games on that and no one notices it, the players, I'm sure maybe you just don't realize it. But how are there no NCAA officials there that say, "Hold on a second, something's off here. This doesn't look right." How does it just yeah it's a real lack of attention to detail, and it gives off it gives off the viewpoint that you don't care about the women's game, and that's something that the NCAA has probably had to deal with for a while now, and when actions speak louder than words, and when you see something like this, that's what people are going to think, that you just don't really care as much about the women's game as you do about the men's game, and that's a shame because like I said, the women are playing some awesome basketball this year.
For sure. Here, let's get to some of these regions here. We'll go through each region one at a time. We're starting the East, obviously. UConn dominates the statement of this region here because obviously they blow San Diego State out of the water. Illinois wins a
Hmm.
tough one against Iowa State here. This game was 23-23, the Illinois UConn game with 151 left in the first half. UConn goes on a 30 to nothing run over 50 minutes. This is made it look like UVA playing
Hmm.
playing in the first four here, what they did to Illinois. Like, this is absurd. And the fact that like UConn just again just so dominant is my big takeaway from these region.
Yeah, yeah. No one's playing with UConn this year. It's their tournament to lose. I think UConn is the only team that can beat UConn this year, and I mean, they're the only team that could play. If they play poor enough, maybe someone can hang with them. The writing was on the wall for Illinois. The couple of games or the couple of days ahead of this. I think Brad Underwood on Thursday made the comment that he hadn't watched much of UConn this year and he didn't know much about them. And it was like, okay, that doesn't sound great. That could be a problem for you. And then I think one of the first media timeouts, they do the interview with him, and he goes, we're going to keep attacking Klingon. If he blocks 50 shots, he blocks 50 shots. And I was like, that doesn't sound like a good plan. I wonder what the Illinois game plan was. Saying that you haven't watched much of them, which first of all is just gonna piss them off and make them play even harder. First of all, and second of all, how have you not watched much of UConn all season long? And then your game plan is just we're going to keep attacking Klingon and let him block 50 shots. And that didn't work as like you mentioned. I think they missed like 14 or 15 shots in a row in that 30-0 run for UConn. So the game plan for Illinois in that Elite Eight game just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But it didn't matter. I mean, no one's beating UConn anyways. At this point now, it's just can Alabama stay within 15 of them? And we'll see about if they end up playing Purdue. I think Purdue could hopefully give them a game, but I thought Illinois could give them a game, and they just ran Illinois off the court. So at this point now, this tournament is UConn's to lose. They've won what now 10 straight tournament games, and none of them have really been even very close, to be honest with you. The last team that's played them close was my St. John's team, and even then they scored 95 points on us, and they kind of had us at arm's length the entire way. So I mean, they're just rolling teams right now. They're so deep. They have so many guys that can hit shots, so many guys that can beat you in different ways. I mean, down low with Klingon and Samson Johnson, those two guys are two of the better big men in the country. And then, Tristan Newton, Cam Spencer, Caravan, so many guys that can hit a 3-pointer that can just kill you. And they didn't even shoot the 3-pointer well, by the way, in this game against Illinois. They went 3 for 17 against Illinois. Like, can you imagine UConn, if they were hitting their threes in this game, they would have won by 40 or 50 probably. It's insane how they're playing right now. And like I said, it's a question of can anyone hang with them? Because at this point, unless they beat themselves, I'm not sure who's beating UConn.
Yeah, for sure here. And in terms of the Brad Underwood stuff, I did feel like this was very much. I've already heard him like talk about UConn. It's all like the scene from Dodgeball with the whole strategy, Cotton. Let's see if that pays off. Basically, that gif all over again.
Yeah, like I don't know if maybe he was trying to with the comments on Thursday, that he hadn't seen much of them. Is he trying to like motivate his guys? They're just like us. They're nothing special. Maybe to get his guys going. I don't know what his game plan was, like I said, but it doesn't seem like there was much of a game plan for Illinois going into that game. And they were able to hang with them through most of the first half. But then UConn just comes out in the second half. I think scored the first 25 points of the second half as well, and that game was curtains. So, and I think Brad Underwood after the game was a little bit humbled in terms of his comments towards UConn because he realized this is a team that's different, and they're now approaching, I think, the level of like this is one of the better teams we've seen all time. So we'll see if they can close it out. But if they are able to win these next two games, and if they win them in dominant fashion, we're looking at one of the that's the conversation for next week, but we could be looking at one of the better teams that the sport has seen in recent memory, at least.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go to the West region here. We got two interesting games on Thursday night. You had two upsets. Alabama outlasts UNC in a classic here. Clemson takes down Arizona. They don't get the Caleb Love revenge spot. They don't get to go to the Final Four at Phoenix. We got a interesting game there where it felt like Clemson just punched them out early. Alabama responded, started blitzing them with threes. So we're sticking with the West region.
Yeah, I do remember making a comment, after on our show after the selection show after the bracket was revealed, and I said this is going to be the region of chaos. I think there's going to be a lot of chaos in this region. Wasn't really correct with that, but at the end of the day, we do get what a 6 seed and a 4 seed in our regional final, so a little bit of chaos. This region was up there for the taking. I think I mentioned that, in our show after the selection show. I did not love the 1, 2, or 3 seed in that region, UNC, Arizona, or Baylor. And Alabama ends up taking it. Like I said, this is an Alabama team that can go up and down the court. They play such an entertaining brand of basketball. On what was it, Thursday against UNC? It was Grant Nelson who went crazy and really won that game for them. Then Saturday night against Clemson, they get such balanced scoring. They get 5 guys in double figures. Sears has been phenomenal for them, and he had 7 3-pointers in that game. Like you mentioned, though, I think Clemson had a great year, and I'm not taking anything away from Clemson, but they threw their punch, and then it kind of felt like they ran out of gas a little bit towards the end there. Great year for them. I like Alabama, though. They play a really entertaining brand of basketball. The question is, can they hang with UConn now? And I don't think so, because it just seems like even UConn against these offensively dominant teams is able to still score on them at will, and then kind of hold their offense in check, like you saw what like they did against Illinois. I don't think UConn beats them by 30, but I do think that UConn really is able to get by them pretty easily. But obviously, credit to Alabama. What an accomplishment for them, making it to the Final Four out of that region. And like I said, they had the opportunity of what I felt was a pretty weak 1, 2, and 3 seed, and they take advantage of it and they go all the way to the Final Four.
Yeah, I think one thing I noticed too about the Alabama gameplay, and this obviously goes back to Nate Oates' roots as a high school math teacher here, is like they take the NBA model to the extreme, basically, where I think like
Mm-hmm.
only like 2 guys are allowed to shoot mid-range shots, and the entire shot profile is either beyond the arc or at the rim, where they're going for either layups or fouls. So it's like they take a lot of the NBA teams are doing, just run it to basically perfection in college, which is something that we have not seen before, really.
Yeah, I'm sure you saw that tweet about their shot chart for I think it was for the Clemson game, and it was literally all 3-pointers or at the rim, and I think there was one mid-range shot that was like a force at the end of the shot clock. But outside of that, it was all threes or everything at the rim. Credit to them, because that's the style that they play, and it's worked for them. And like I said at the top, if you're an NBA fan, Alabama is a team for you because they play probably the closest style to that NBA brand of basketball that we've seen. And it's very entertaining. I'm personally not a big NBA guy, but when you put it in the college game, and it's such a stark difference to what a lot of other teams are doing, it's very very fun to watch, and they've rode that all the way to the Final Four. So credit to them.
Yeah, let's go to the Midwest here. We got obviously some games here. Tennessee Creighton on Thursday night was fun. On Friday night was fun here. Purdue like took a punch from Gonzaga, answered back, and ran away with the game
Mhm.
here. Purdue Tennessee first. Your thoughts on that game? That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, one of my favorite games of the tournament, man. I really enjoyed this game. Like I said, you had two of the best players in college basketball, Dalton Knecht and Zach Edey, and they just go blow for blow. Knecht scores 37 points, hits 6 threes. Edey goes for 40 and 16, and just goes crazy. Knecht was on fire early. Kind of, I feel like trailed off a little bit. I just wish he would have gotten a little bit of help. I mean, Zakai Ziegler had a really rough game. And I don't think Tennessee did not have one other guy in double figures besides Knecht. He scored. He had 14 of their 24 field goals, so the rest of the team had 10 made shots, and he had 14. I just wish that they would have had someone else step up to really make this game fun, because it was a back and forth game. Tennessee felt like was kind of struggling to stay with them the entire way, and it kind of felt like all throughout that Purdue was going to win this game by like 5 or 6 points, and they do end up doing that. But awesome game from Dalton Knecht, and an awesome season from him as well, in his 1 year at Tennessee. On the Purdue side, though, Zach Edey, man, was just unbelievable. Felt like he was just dominating the Tennessee bigs, getting them in foul trouble, getting to the free throw line. I think he shot 22 free throws in this game. Probably one of the best games. I know he had a career high. One of the best games I've ever seen him play. Was just by far the best player on the court, in terms of just getting the ball and either scoring or getting fouled. It felt like in the second half, the Purdue offense would just get the ball to Edey, and he's going to either score or get fouled, which has kind of been their offense all season. But it was like hyper on that towards the end of the game when they really needed some baskets. So credit to Purdue, they finally get back to the Final Four. They finally kind of exercise those demons. And they do it, not really being terribly challenged. Obviously, this game they got a little bit of a challenge, but nothing crazy. And now, they should have a real opportunity to play UConn in the national title game. So we'll see how that works. But in my opinion, like I said, one of the more fun games of the tournament when you had two of the best players in college basketball going blow for blow, and really just going one on one almost. Really, really fun game.
Yeah, I think the other thing I want to touch on here with Purdue before we move on here is obviously the Zach Edey thing. I feel like one of the big discourses online right now, especially on Twitter right now, is the whole idea of like, is he getting a favorable whistle? Because obviously you mentioned he went to the free throw line 22 times. We see a lot of people going, "Oh, Purdue, you're playing 8-on-5. You play Purdue. Zach Edey's
Hmm.
never in foul trouble despite his size here." Like, do you think that he's having an issue like getting a favorable whistle here? Or do you feel like that? Like I think it's for me, it's 50-50. I feel like yes, he draws a lot of contact inside. Yes, maybe you could call another foul or two on the other end, but I don't think it's been like outrageous in my opinion.
No, and I'm glad you brought that up. I mean he got to the free throw line so much in that game. It's so hard to officiate him, and they were talking about that on the broadcast because he's such a unique player with his size, obviously. I wouldn't say that it was egregious, the calls that he was getting. My only thing with Edie is sometimes he'll kind of get the ball and it doesn't even really look like he's like trying to shoot it. He'll just kind of do the arm flail kind of, and he'll get the foul call. That's my only thing with him. And he did it like one or two times against Tennessee, and that bothers me because it doesn't really look like he's actually trying to shoot the ball. He kind of just flailed his arms. And I think the officials are like, oh, he had to get fouled. So we'll send him to the line. That's my only thing with him. But like I said, nothing like crazy egregious to where I'm like, that's not a foul. That's a horrible call. It's just I think it's really, really hard for officials to deal with Zach Edey because he's going to get so much contact just naturally because he's such a big guy. So it's tough to officiate him for sure. I didn't think anything was out of the ordinary though in that game.
I think the thing that helps Edie wise, if you watch him closely, like he doesn't do a lot of these dumb, obvious fouls where he's like grabbing the guy and pulling him down on the hook and holds and stuff like that. He's not doing that a lot.
Mhm.
Very good body control.
No, 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 and like I mean, to the people that are taken away, like I don't know how he's going to look on the next level on the in the NBA level, but in terms of college, he's one of the better college players we've seen, in a long time, and obviously a lot of that has to do with his height and his size, but I don't take anything away from Zach Edey. He's been an absolute crazy player for the past couple of years for Purdue, and I'm glad that they finally get their shine and go to the Final Four now because he's had an awesome college career, and I'm really it's really been fun to watch him. I don't know how he's going to be on the next level. No, it's not my job to evaluate guys like that, but in terms of a college player, one of the better ones I've ever seen.
Yeah, let's go to the South region here as well. We got obviously the start with the big thing for me, Duke upsetting Houston here. Thing you feel about that game because obviously Jamal Shed going down really changed the whole game for Houston. Because I think if he's healthy, I think they win that game.
I think so too. Yeah, I just think that made Houston so offensively challenged in that game against Duke. And Duke, up until the NC State game, had been playing some phenomenal defense throughout the NCAA tournament, and then they get torched really just in that second half against NC State. But Duke had been playing some phenomenal defense, but it just made them so one dimensional. Houston, when Shed got hurt in that game against Duke, and really turned the tables. I do think Houston probably gets by. At the very least, it's a very, very close game. Once he got hurt, it kind of turned into Duke's game to lose. But listen, they got a gift and they took advantage of it. Credit to them. Obviously, then they get a big gift in playing the 11 seed NC State, and they can take advantage of that. But so it kind of ends up being a sour taste in their mouths with a chance, to go to the Final Four and you lose to an 11 seed. But yeah, I do think that game probably ends differently if he does not get hurt.
Yeah, obviously, we'll talk NC State too here, obviously, where
Yeah.
now they go ahead, they beat Marquette in a game where like Marquette missed more open shots I've ever seen in my life. They had like
Oh my goodness.
in terms of shot quality, I think I saw they were like a 79 shot quality of 100, which means like if they hit like half of those, they're probably blowing out NC State, but they don't. That's the breaks of a 1 game situation here. They beat Duke
Hmm.
to go on this big run at the end of this. They push them out of the water here, and now 9 wins in 19 days. They are now in the Final Four. This is a team that was losing in the first half of the ACC first round game to Louisville. The same Louisville fired their coach after the season was over here. Now they're in the Final Four, and I think now we have to start asking, do we start taking the 2011 UConn comp series a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's been a crazy run for them. You talk about, firing a coach. They could have been having a serious conversation about their coach if that shot against Virginia does not go in, that half court heave, which really saved their entire season. If Virginia first of all makes a free throw up by three with 5 seconds left, that game's over, and Virginia moves on to the ACC finals, and NC State is out. And who knows about their coaching situations after kind of a mediocre letdown type season. They win that one, they beat it in North Carolina, and then they go on this crazy run in March Madness. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. This is a team that really came from going, absolutely nowhere in terms of this season. Who could have ever seen this coming? Even after winning the ACC and having that all that momentum, I don't know one person except for Jim Boeheim that picked NC State to go to the Final Four to even make like any semblance of a run here. Obviously, they got the huge gift in Oakland knocking off Kentucky and getting kind of an easier second round game. But then, I mean, you got to credit them. Listen, Marquette missed a bunch of shots. Duke, I thought, was completely lost offensively, and just in that game against NC State, it felt like NC State kind of threw one punch in the second half, and Duke just completely folded. Kyle Filipowski was horrible in that game, and he fouled out. One of the worst games I've seen him play. Duke just had no answers for NC State in the second half, on either end, but especially on the offensive end. But like I said, I mean, you beat Marquette and Duke. Listen, they missed some open shots, but you got to give credit to NC State for that run and beating two top 15 teams. In 3 days, really, to go to the Final Four. It's an incredible accomplishment for them, and it speaks to everything we love about March Madness. Obviously, the team that was kind of left for dead, the coach that had a lot of questions surrounding his future. One half court shot goes in, and then all of a sudden, they go on this magical rundown to the Sweet Six or to the Final Four. It's incredible, and it speaks to everything that we love about college basketball. In to your point about the Marquette shooting in that game, I believe I was going back and looking earlier today. I believe the two best teams in this 9 game run that they've had that have shot the best from 3 point range against them, I think were Louisville and Oakland. Like I think those were the two best teams. All the good competition, North Carolina, Duke, Marquette, all the good teams that they've played. The two best teams that shot the three against them, I believe, were Louisville and Oakland, which just shows you the absurdity of March. Like, how does that happen? But DJ Burns has become, America's, darling now, and he rolls onto the Final Four for a really cool matchup against Zach Edey. So we'll see that. But just the best part of March is NC State.
Yeah, so the only guy who could beat the NC State 3-point defense is Jack Elke.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. I mean, how crazy is that? Like all of these high-powered offenses, all these top 15 teams that you're playing, and Oakland is kind of the one team that like kind of figures you out. And you get, I mean, Oakland was the team in the tournament that's given them the best game so far. Like that game went to overtime. That was a great game. They rolled through Texas Tech. They really were in control of the entire game against Marquette. And in the second half, they dominated Duke. Like of their NCAA tournament wins, Oakland was the one that was the most in question, which is again just crazy. The absurdity of March. Now they run into a team in Purdue, which listen, if they beat Purdue, I might just have to pick them against UConn if it is UConn in the final. Like they might just be a team of destiny at this point if they somehow get past Purdue.
Yeah, I will also say here before we move on to the Final Four preview here, in terms of Duke here, this has to be massively disappointing. You brought up last week they hadn't won as the lower seed in the NCAA tournament
Mm-hmm.
like over 30 years. They
Mm-hmm.
do it. They get an NC State team in here that was basically like a team they had beaten the regular season. Yes, they lost in the ACC tournament, but like they have a letdown in the second half here. I don't think any player on that roster went backwards more year than Kyle Filipowski. I remember last year Filipowski saying, "Oh, like this guy should be a lottery pick if he comes out." He stayed. Like he was
Mm-hmm.
invisible the entire NCAA tournament.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mentioned that before. He had 11 and 9, 3 of 12 from the field, 0 from 3 from three, and he fouled out with a couple of minutes to go. And on the other end, he just let DJ Burns absolutely dominate him, going 13 of 19 from the floor. Yeah, Filipowski was horrendous in this game, and like I said, Duke just outscored by 18 in the second half, up 6 at halftime. To really not even being close in the second half. It just felt like NC State kind of, made that punch, like I said, threw that punch, and there was no one on Duke to respond. Filipowski, who you would have assumed was kind of your leader, your guy who's your go-to guy, was not there, and Duke was just so disjointed offensively. And they had a sequence there where they could not get a stop defensively either on both ends, but especially on the offensive end. Just a really, really disjointed performance by Duke and what a missed opportunity because like you said, they finally beat a team that's a higher seed than them. They get the gift of Shed going down and beating Houston, and now with a trip to the Final Four on the line, you play an NC State team that just beat you a couple of weeks ago. That's an 11 seed that from a talent perspective, you know that you're better than them. At this point in the season, NC State's probably playing a little bit better than Duke, but from a talent perspective, you know that you're better than them. You're holding teams to like low 50s in the NCAA tournament, and you give up 55 points to them in the second half. I mean, how many Duke fans were probably buying their Final Four tickets at halftime, up by 6 in this game, saying, all right, we're going to close this out. We're not going to blow this lead. And then you go 55 in the second half. Just an absolute bummer for them. With a real opportunity to make a run to the Final Four, which would have been an unexpected run because no one was picking this team, or not no one, but very few were picking this team to go to the Final Four. And they got the gift really of playing an injured Houston team and then an 11 seed NC State in their Sweet 16 Elite Eight rounds, and they're unable to get it done. It's got to be a disappointment for them.
Yeah, sure. Let's get to the Final Four now. We'll look at these two games here. First up here, we'll start with the early game, NC State and Purdue, which I mean, NCAA, I'm sure was not happy. I had to put UConn in the late games. UConn's been crushing people, but
Yeah.
that's the way the matchups broke here. I think this game has a chance to be a lot of fun here because NC State's playing with house money and Purdue has all the pressure. Oh, you have to beat the 11 seed to get to the shot at UConn here. And I think, unlike pretty much any team they play a tournament this far, NC State has a guy who can give Edie a different look in terms of like a very physical, banging body down low with DJ Burns. I think that's the match of the game.
Yeah, yeah, and if Burns can stay out of foul trouble, that's the one thing, guarding Edie, as we've seen. Obviously, we just talked about it. It's so hard for them to officiate him, and he had the way that he's able to draw fouls. If Burns can stay out of foul trouble, that is the matchup that you want to watch. One of the most unique players in college basketball, and DJ Burns, and then one of the best in Zach Edey. What a matchup! But this kind of gives me vibes of like Purdue playing a 16 seed again. Not that NC State is a 16 seed, but Purdue is such a big favorite in this game. Everyone assumes that Purdue is going to roll through this game. What happens if NC State is up 5 with 7 minutes to go? What happens if this is a 2-point game at halftime? Like, does Purdue start to get in their own heads? Because I feel like the talent discrepancy, I should say, was not all that different between Purdue and Tennessee. That was a good game for them, but in terms of playing an NC State team, it's like you're so heavily favored. Everyone expects you to roll through this team. What if it's a close game? What do you do? Do those memories of losing to a 16 seed last year and losing to all these double-digit seeds, do they creep in and do they start to mess with the heads of this Purdue team? That's what I'm curious to see. Is this a close game? Can NC State hang with them? And then does Purdue start to get in their own head like we've seen them do in previous NCAA tournaments? And does NC State somehow, continue this Cinderella run all the way to the final?
Yeah, I think another thing to watch if you're Purdue, I know it's easy to drive their entire offense here, but I think like they have so many guys who can shoot the three ball. That they have like 6 guys in rotation who can shoot over 42% from the floor from the 3-point line. They got to knock down their outside shots against the NC State team that will give them up if you are opportunistic there.
Exactly, yeah, and it's like we've been saying, NC State, teams have not shot the three well at all against them, but I don't think it's really been due to their defense. I just think it's been teams missing open shots, and Marquette was a really good 3-point shooting team as well, and they couldn't hit an open shot. Duke, same thing. So, Purdue's going to get good looks. You know that you're going to get good looks, especially, with the way that you run your offense through Edey and then kicking it back out. Can these guys on the outside hit some 3-pointers? Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, can these guys hit threes that are going to be good looks? Can they step up and can they give you what they've been giving you all season, basically continue that? And if they are able to do that, I think that NC State or Purdue should roll through this game. But we'll see. If that trend continues, if teams just missing good looks against NC State.
Yeah, we'll go to the other game now, the UConn game here. And early line, UConn's favored by 11.5, which feels very, very high for a Final Four line with a 4 seed in the mix here. The thing I would worry about this game here is that obviously Alabama can score anybody here, but their defense again is a problem because they really have nobody inside who can slow down Donovan Clingan, which is a big issue because he will just go to the rack. I think he's going to go for 30 points plus in this game here. And on the defensive end too, having Clingan down there is somebody who can impact those layups here. It makes it very easy for UConn to say, hey, let's just chase you off the 3-point line and drive you into the middle of our defense.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how Alabama stays with them. You talked about that spread. It just feels like Vegas is like, how high can we reasonably make this thing to start? to at least get some action on Alabama. But I just think everyone's going to be on UConn, obviously, and then I don't know how Alabama stays within 15 points of UConn. Nothing against them, but like you mentioned, man, I don't know who's guarding Zach Edey or who's guarding Donovan Clingan. I don't know who's going after Clingan on the offensive end. And yeah, UConn is just such a wagon right now. I'm not sure how anyone stays with them, for the course of a full 40 minutes. The question is, is this game a game at halftime? Because we've seen UConn basically through the first three games, or the first four games of the NCAA tournament, their games have been over by about, the 15-minute mark of the second half. So is this even a game, late in the second half, midway through the second half, early in the second half? Is Alabama able to hang with them? Nothing against them. It's just UConn's on a different level right now. And, we just saw them play a really talented offensive team in Illinois, and you saw what they did against them, holding them scoreless for almost an hour of real time. So they got a week to game plan now for Alabama. Don't love Alabama's chances. Nothing against them. It's just how good UConn's been all season long.
Yeah, for sure. Here. And obviously, our last question here, I want to start touching you on this here. Like, UConn's always been so dominant. They've won every game of the tournament by 23 plus points, which is an absurd stat to think about
Yep.
here. They beat you in so many different ways here. Like, is there a way for somebody in this Final Four to actually beat UConn besides UConn just not showing up for a game or playing very sloppy?
I don't think so, man. Like I don't know. I don't because even a bad, a B+ game for UConn, I still think that they win. Like they're so deep. They have so many guys. If Cam Spencer's having an off game, Alex Caravan's gonna pick it up. If Tristan Newton's having an off game, Diarra will come off the bench and pick it up. Like they're so deep. They have so many guys that can beat you. To have 6 or 7 guys at the same time have an off night, it just doesn't, they're too good. Like it's just not going to happen. So unless they make those mental mistakes, and kind of beat themselves, which they're not going to do because they're so well coached with Danny Hurley, they're not really going to make those mental mistakes. They haven't done it all season long, and really even last season they didn't do that. So it's just I don't see a path to beat this team. Like I said, they're too deep. They're too well coached. They can do it inside. They can do it outside. They can do it on the offensive end. They can do it on the defensive end. I would love to see them play Purdue because I do think Purdue can at least challenge them. With Edey going against Clingan, Edey probably has the edge there, I would say, over Clingan. But that's an awesome matchup as well. So I want to see Purdue against UConn. I think that would be at least a somewhat compelling matchup. Because other than that, I don't know if either of these other two teams, Alabama or NC State, can even really challenge them. They're just on a different level this season.
Yeah, I think for me, the key to beating them is getting Clingan off the floor in foul trouble because we've
Mm-hmm.
seen the stats that I think they were like I saw I think what game I think it's the Illinois game they're putting up here. I think that UConn was like plus 27 with Clingan on the floor and -7 when he's off the floor because he
Yeah.
affects the game in so many ways on both ends. I think if you can get him out and you don't have that big monster in the middle blocking shots and altering the
Mhm.
defensive end of this year. I think that's your chance. You have to get him in foul trouble. I think other than that, they have to beat themselves.
Yeah, yeah, and that Klingon. I mean, I think we saw the same stat. I want to say they gave up like it was some absurd numbers, like 14 points or something like that, with Klingon on the floor against Illinois. They're just a completely different defensive team as well. With him on the floor, and like you said, in a game like a team like Alabama that doesn't really have anyone that can match up with him. You just you wonder if they're going to be able to get him into foul trouble and get him off the floor. But yeah, if there is a path, that's probably it. Maybe getting Klingon off the floor and seeing what you can if you can attack defensively then. But yeah, I don't see anyone competing with them this year.
I don't either. We'll be back next week to break it all down, Troy. Thanks for all the time. I really appreciate it. If you want to follow you on social media, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Troy Mauriello. It's Mauriello. Definitely check me out. Like I said, if you're a St. John's fan, I'm tweeting about St. John's all the time. Transfer portal, Rick Pitino, getting to work on that. So definitely check me out.